Nick Rushworth doing the papers this week, looking at the world's press this time. You're starting with that train crash in Spain, aren't you, Nick?
Hi to you, Stuart, and hi to everybody. The train crash, horrendous, very high statistics there with the number of dead and also the number of wounded. I turned straight away to the local paper in Galicia in northwest Spain. There you can see the paper La Voz de Santiago. The headline, Tragedy in Santiago de Compostela, the worst experience of my life. Now that piece there is showing one of the many pictures that we're seeing of this horrific accident, and the story is actually about 6 neighbours who came out of their house. They heard a huge explosion and they ran to the scene trying to help. One of them said it was Dantesque, it was an inferno, it was hell. They looked for the closest thing nearby that they could use as a stretcher to help remove the wounded. The quote there, we broke windows and we forced doors. So the locals there pitching in what is a horrific accident for Spain. The country will be in mourning, of course.
And of course, the accident dominating the Spanish press. Nick's also pulled out a piece in El País looking at fears about train safety, not just in Spain as well.
Well, this piece in El País is saying 3 train accidents in 1 month. And the photo that we can see here is not of the incident in Spain now, but look at that picture. That was Lac Megantic in Quebec province on the 16th of July. If we recall, there were dozens of people killed in that and 2,000 people evacuated in that incident. El País listing the horror. We had the incident south of Paris, didn't we? The Paris-Limoges journey. That was just a few days ago. Also in El País, it's listing another one which is back in June in Buenos Aires. So real concerns about train safety there, aren't there, internationally, Stuart?
And Pope Francis has called for prayers for the victims in Spain, whilst on his visit to Brazil, of course. He's been attending events marking World Youth Day there.
Well, I looked at the Brazilian press, and of course it wasn't the right timing for any reactions from the Pope to be published in the Brazilian papers on the Spanish train accident. But he is nevertheless on the front pages about World Youth Day, and it's about his comment, his stance against legalization of drugs as a way of fighting drug addiction. O Globo, the Brazilian paper, is saying that his quote in his speech about not legalizing drugs was that the many merchants of death who follow the logic of power and money, there are just so many of them and they must be fought at all costs. He said the focus must be on education and justice values. Those are the root causes of drug use. So he's making the papers on the front page in the Brazilian press every day, isn't he, till Sunday, World Youth Day.
Sure, and one young person, if you like, seeking out some sort of justice is Edward Snowden. He's still holed up at Moscow airport, isn't he?
Well, he's stuck there in Moscow airport, and perhaps whether he'll get out eventually is really one of those questions that we'll see. His hopes were dashed on Wednesday, weren't they, when there was a sign that he might be allowed out. The Hill there in Washington is saying that with the messages that Moscow is sending, that they are taking his request seriously for asylum, that this will really become a thorn in Washington's side in bilateral ties. I turn to an opinion piece in the Moscow Times that Putin is really coming out ahead in this spat between Washington and Moscow over Snowden. The message there is that Obama's image as an angel has been tarnished, and there they have Putin with the horns coming out of their head. He can easily now dismiss any criticism of authoritarian rule from Washington. And just to end, I want to go to a piece again about Snowden, and it's in the LA Times reporting that Snowden now has a Russian lawyer. And what did this Russian lawyer do? But he gave him some summer reading. What is on that list? It's Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevsky, no less. And my reaction was, I don't think Snowden's going to want to read about Raskolnikov when he's in Moscow airport, desperately worrying about his fate. Also on the summer reading list is The Cherry Orchard by Chekhov, so perhaps a bit of lighter reading for Snowden as he thinks things over in Moscow airport.
He's got plenty of time at least, hasn't he, Nick? Thanks very much, Nick, with the International Paper Review here on France 24.